someone the height of fucking Van Mars. I realize the benefit from being. I just realized downstairs one of the great advantages of poetry is compared to rock and roll. Rock and roll, you have to wear these tight fucking pants. For poetry readings, you could wear loose pants, so like when you gotta take a last second piss before you go on stage, you don't have all these fucking marks all over your pants, you know, it just kind of sinks down right into your shoe. Tonight and forever. I mean, you know, you want to deal with Ahmed Erdogan, for God's sake? You know what I need, actually, is what I need is some light. I mean, I don't need these things so hard, and I need something from behind. How did the other person read? I didn't check this out. No, and not in a qualitative sense. Stand back a bit, and then that would be okay. Because I can't see what the hell I'm doing otherwise. I mean, you know, I've already broken my code by doing roadie work. It's gonna be quite, maybe just a little bit more. You want to get shadow? Hey, don't bitch, you know, I have to get these lights in my eyes, too. Yeah, I'm all set, but if you could get it any better, it'll be cool with me. You know, this is what you get for not coming to sound check. No, that's good if you could do that. How's that? Down a little bit more. That's good. That's good. All right, man. You know, like, get a pair of shades. Shit. Okay. Thought everyone that went to nightclubs wore shades anyway. This is from Forced Entries. This is called A Day at the Races. The French call them papillons d'amour, that is, the butterflies of love. I call them crabs, the tiny parasites of crotch. Jenny Ann noticed them first. Last night she snagged one as it broke loose from the camouflage of her jet black pubic underbrush and slowly tried to patrol the crevice of a scar from a past cesarean birth, like a scout soldier traversing a trench. She seized it hostage, placing it in a specimen jar, and proceeded through deep infiltration to raid the hirsute main camp, at first taking more prisoners, then proceeding to a harsher yet more expedient tactic of strict search and destroy. She arrived at my room in the Chelsea Hotel this morning with jar in hand. After a short briefing, she removed from her bag a pocket flashlight and magnifying glass. I was ordered to remove my pants. The search began immediately with a great enthusiasm and vigor on her part as well as mine. My strawberry blondish pubic hairs made the job from a visual standpoint a snap, so to speak. I was skeptical, however, that I could be a carrier of said invaders. Hey, you're wasting your time. I'm totally clean, I offered patiently. Oh, yes? Well, what's that there? She replied. It's a tiny blackhead, it's all. I peered closely with the glass. Yeah, well, it's a fucking moving blackhead then. Check that sucker out. She was right. I was shocked. I felt hygiene deficient. I wondered who gave what to whom, but no sense looking for blame. We were in this together. It felt sort of sweet, actually, sharing such an affliction. I held still as Jenny Ann removed the visible parties. It hurt a bit. They had burrowed deep into the pores. Apparently, we had been the hosts of a tenacious strain. Finally, she resorted to tweezers, depositing the captives in a separate jar which had a picture of a beaming baby's face on it and was labeled stewed carrots. I asked her why she was saving the little buggers, which on close examination did indeed bear an uncanny resemblance to the common crab. As far as the French are concerned, I could say in all honesty that not even Nabokov has seen a butterfly that looked remotely like these creatures. You'll see, she answered. Here, just let me rub in some of this lotion I borrowed from Roger. It was a wonderful manner by which to be medicated. My cock quickly stood erect, which was fortunate because we discovered two stragglers hiding beneath the base of it. With the application done, Jenny Ann removed one of the resonants of her jar. Now you pick one. She looked over. Make sure he's a lively type. We're going to have a race. I picked out a trooper who had been circling restlessly around the bottom of the jar. We took a long sheet of drawing paper from Jenny's portfolio and drew a line down the center. The first race was the 12-inch sprint. We laid down the paper so that our pubic hair awaited at the finish line as an incentive. My crab ran like a fucking fix, falling off the edge halfway through the race. Jenny's was in tip-top form. He came in clocked at 23 seconds. We spent the next hour establishing the best of our stables and enjoyed the rest of the day at the races. What a woman who could turn an ailment into a viable recreation. Oh shit, I don't want to hear that boring shit, man. I mean, all I'm fucking talking about is picking hairs out of my fucking crotch, Jack. I mean, I'm describing a simple experience that went down in New York City. I know it's not better off than Africa. I know we are all better off than the people in Africa. But I do not live in Africa. I've done fucking 50 times more fucking benefits and fucking public ads on the fucking radio than you ever had done jack shit for those people. So don't fucking taunt me. And that will be the last of my audience question and answers section. This is called Times Square's Cage. I still vividly recall the first night I spent alone in Times Square. I followed this one whore through the late hours as she moved like a trawler through the currents of deals denied for short green. I was on her like a mutt puppy, always keeping a valve of safe retreat 1/4 block long. I was more threatened by her than any stray pimps who would, no doubt, consider me a heat-seeking pest at most. She was enormous, over 6 feet easily, including naturally her 4-inch heels, which I thought inviolate, never to be removed. Her breasts were crawling like some sea life from an unchartable depth out of a black bra. The bra beneath the dress, which was so short that as I faked lacing my sneakers, crouching on one knee, I could clearly see revealed the connection of her black seam stockings and her red garters like two deadly circuits fused to activate a device of total annihilation. A vial of mascara must have been emptied on those eyes. The whole effect, the body, dress, the makeup, was as if someone had placed a Rubens portrait at the bottom of a cesspool, and after centuries of strangeness and decay among the stillness of vile things and vile notions, some chance lightning hit, and out of it she was risen, delivered onto these streets in a pink Cadillac, and she walks and walks because there is nobody who can ever make her price. That was a long while back, but still, at least once a month, I let that desire out of its cage and swim through these sidewalks like the slum canals of Babylon. You wear an erection with the consistency of quicksilver, or an election. You breathe shorter breaths, and even those grow quicker with the shadows growing from side streets, which are shaped for ignominy as a sports car is shaped for speed. It's not like the periodic check-ins at a clinic for the bemused, which I make with Jenny Ann and Roger when we come up to goof around at the Penny Arcades in Times Square. No, you must be alone to achieve this wonderment, as the others passing by you must be anonymous. That is the key word. That is the sex which only the city allows. God, there is nothing more downcast than running into someone you know in Times Square. There can be no external dialogue, only that between you and the iguana-faced familiar you rented out at 42nd and 8th. Otherwise, it's all a spiny silence, the fire engines and cop car sirens, the howls of the peep show boys, the threats of cardboard preachers, either head off in another direction or are devoured by the familiar, who spit it all out later as something green and pink in the shape of a baby bottle. Whenever the thought arises, as it has lately, of giving that small town in California, which my poet friends recommend constantly by mail, a chance, I must think of the consequences of watching forlornly that desire for the quick and anonymous, locked so long in its cage, evaporating like an uncapped perfume. The horror of a town where everybody knows your name, a town without humid side streets, without dangerous lust. Here, nobody calls your name. They only point their finger, then move it slowly, but without caution, toward its own end. This is actually another rather humorous piece in a certain way. That's okay. But, I mean, seriously, man, that's, you know, yeah. But I ain't Harry Belafonte, man, and I ain't gonna sing "We Are the World." We are the children, man. You know, because I ain't the fucking world. They're the world, and I ain't the children. You know, I mean, so, you know, what are you gonna do, man? You know, what you gonna do? Okay, this is called "The Poet and the Vibrator." I was dancing with Ren at Max's tonight, Sympathy for the Devil, waiting. It's the only song I could ever dance to. Those little whoo, made my feet move in a way that didn't make me look like a total asshole. Waiting for my man, who happens to be a woman, to show at the ice, and the Velvets to come on at midnight, when I got a cryptic message from Ann Waldman passed on by that blonde waitress who was always humming Amazing Grace and getting hit on by the parvenus of the quasi-Italian aristocrat set. Message read, "Hope you have not forgotten that the Big G is in town for the night, and you said you put him up and that he will be at your apartment by 11. I checked Ren's watch, and mild dismay, it was already 10 past the designated hour. Of course, the Big G was none other than Mr. Allen Ginsberg, and I recalled in one congealed mass of anxiety that I had indeed promised to put the great poet up, since Billy Berkson, who allows me to share this place, was away in Mexico, and Alan's apartment was being de-bed-bugged by the fumigators this week, and he was only in town for the night en route from one university reading to the next, and thus I had to move ass back to 10th Street to allow him entrance and take the opportunity to engage him in deep poetic conversation. I told Ren hastily that I had to eschew any further pas de deux and split, moving down Park Avenue South with post-dance floor exhilaration. I even forgot about the connection arriving with the goods. I mean, who cares about drugs when the poet is waiting at your doorstep? I turned the corner of 10th and 3rd to a comical scene. On an otherwise vacant street, darting glances left and right, with the alacrity of petty crime paranoia, is the hirsute master himself, the leader of the pack, tossing pebbles from the street construction site down the block in handfuls against the window on the ground floor. "Hey, it's the window around back, you fucking juvenile delinquent," I whisper, having snuck up on his back with felony feet. "And by the way," I add, "anyone ever tell you throw like a girl?" He looked serious at first, then sheepish. "They just said it was on the ground floor," said Alan. I thought you might be on the nod or something." I never nod with the lights out. I shoot back, and we take the steps, and I open the front door and lead him down the hall and into the apartment. It's a nice place and a real steal to boot. Bill got it a year ago, furnished it with uptown money, and invited me to stay with him for about 4 months ago. I usually pass on the loft, sleeping up there, unless Deborah Duxter is staying there, and crash right there on the velvet luxury sofa. I've yet to burn a single hole in it, I could proudly add. I smoke the joint with Alan, get the bedding arrangements straight. "No, Alan, I don't think so, not tonight," etc. I give him instead the honor of Bill's back bedroom. We get serious munchies after the joint, and decide on Ratner's for soup and blintzes, the all-night dairy restaurant. Out into the energetic, poetic streets, Ginsberg getting the usual hippie cheers and blue-collar jeers. Half of America wants to look like him, the other half wants to see him dead. As for me, I see him eat, and Lord, he can surely put it away. There's a little unscheduled sideshow in the back booth. It seems some big-time rock promoter is telling Yippie leader Jerry Rubin that he is an asshole of enormous proportion. I asseverate this opinion of the promoter to Alan sotto voce. Alan, pressured to stick pure ass to his fellow counterculture honcho, assures me what a lily Rubin in fact is. "Come on, Alan," I in turn opine. I mean, I dig Abby in lots of ways, but Rubin strictly from fucking Robitussin. The best you could say is just a fucking placebo ass, and at the worst, he's dangerous hypocrisy and fancy boots. No shit, check out those feet, man. Those rock star snakeskin jobs. They go for $400 at least. Give me a break. Alan begins to raise a finger, pedagogue style. I think, holy shit, I'm in for it. But I'm rescued from the lecture by the arrival of dessert, which Alan obviously considers more serious business than an offensive Jerry Rubin. On the way back home, we run into none other than the abbot of Warholdem, Paul Morrissey. With his usual Bronx hand animation, he lays on Alan the outline of his newly planned project, a Civil War epic produced naturally by Andy and directed by himself. He wants Alan to play the part of Walt Whitman, issuing aid and comfort in every sense of the word to the Union wounded and any rebels, for that matter, if they're cute enough. "A lot of good-looking boys," inquires Alan. "And that's the way we work there, Alan. That's our signature," Alan, Paul replies. "Sounds like fun," Alan's bubbling. Any script written yet?" Yeah, script. Not yet. Yeah, Paul Marcy sounded a lot like the liar on Saturday Night Live, you know? Script. Yeah, you know, they never worked from a script. It was just people got up there and talk, man, you know? Like, you know, script, yeah. Script, yeah. Not yet, but I'll send it over with my wife, Morgan Fairchild, whom I've seen naked. No, a script, not yet, but we'll send it over to you soon, an outline at least. And by the way, Jim, there may be some work for you here, like writing dialogue when we get to that stage. Yeah, fine, I shoot back. Just remember, any bones you throw at me here and now will be picked up, stored away, and brought back to you later. The elephant don't forget, Paul, so I hope you mean it. Hey, don't worry, Paul assures me. Hey, maybe we can even use you as a soldier. What about that, Alan? Don't you think that that hair of Jim's would look nice in color on the screen? Did I mention it? We're doing this one in color. Oh, yeah, this is an epic. We're pulling out all the stops here. Yeah, that red hair, that would look nice against the burning of Atlanta scene there, you know, with the flames in the background. With this conversation ended, and the abbot resuming his manic pace, heading home to another night of serious asexuality, I'm hoping his last remarks didn't inflame Alan's passion. Turning the key into the apartment, I'm wondering what to do if he does try to put the move on me. I tell him again that, as honored guest, he gets to sleep in the master bedroom. There's no problem, and I lead him back there. As I'm setting the alarm clock for Alan's early wake-up to the airport, I hear his voice behind me asking, hey, what's this thing? I turn around and gasp. In his hand, the poet is holding Billy B's heavy-duty plugged directly into wall socket because batteries are not enough to power this motherfucking vibrator. I realize that Deborah Duxter, the debutante, my girlfriend, must have left it lying there in the sheets when she left it yesterday morning. It is one mean machine. 3 varying powers and a hard rubber half ball on the end. It probably gives a hell of a body massage, but Deb and I wouldn't know about that. The more limited area uses we have devised for it, however, are spectacular. There is no way around it. I explained to Alan its functions. As I detail the matter, a great expression of sheer awe grows across Alan's face. You think I might try it? He asks, his eyes bulging at the intricacy of its engineering. Be my guest, I tell him as I walk back to the living room. You better stick with the low speed at first. So as I lay down to read in the living room, I hear the familiar hum of the machine at its #1 setting. Within minutes, numero dos. Then the full roar of high speed. I hear a yell from the bedroom, a big loud yell. Holy shit, I jump up. His heart couldn't take it. I dash back. It's not a pretty sight. Apparently his scream was one of the ecstatic variety. There was jism everywhere. He hit the bottom of the sleeping loft above him that we used to store spare books, for God's sake. It was hanging from a beam like a mini stalactite. Wow, that's pretty good, boss. I looked down. That's what I call artistic thrust. But the poet had a look of sheer horror on his face. He was wrestling with the vibrator like it was a fucking bobcat. It was still slapping around his half-hard dick, which was red as a midget being choked. I can't turn it off, he burst out urgently. Pull the plug, quick. My dick feels like a sparring partner. I made that part up. He didn't really say that. I bent to the socket and yanked out the plug. Then I pulled it by the wire off Alan's spent body as if I were reeling in some lethal eel. There was some jism on the rubber tip, but before I could grab a tissue to scoop it off, it plunked onto the pillow next to the poet's head. That was incredible. He spoke in a sort of glottal stop, each word popping from his lungs in a separate burst of air. I didn't want to tell him, for fear he might want to try it again, that this was not the proper way to do it, not the proper way at all. That the right way, at least to my way of thinking, was to wear a pair of tight underwear. I usually borrow a pair from Deborah. And you run the ball along your hard-on as if you were ironing a shirt. That way your cock doesn't whack around all over the room and you're not left with cum hanging from every shelf and rafter. I casually slipped the machine out of sight, then offering another goodnight, retired to the sofa and my reading. Alan was asleep quickly, and I didn't hear either the alarm or him leaving in the morning. I found a sweet note on waking, however. Apart from other things, it said, "I hope I wasn't too much trouble." Hardly. Well, I knocked over both my glasses of water. Could I get another one by any chance? Like club soda or something? This is called Limbo. I duck into a strange church to rest, absorb some silence. Sit beneath that station of the cross where Christ's face is washed clean by a woman's veil. I read in the Times last week that an ecclesiastical council has taken the official position that the church has in fact never had an official position concerning the state of limbo, that in-between place for children who die without receiving the grace of baptism. Pascal died young because of such statements, but he died laughing. I think the church is way off on this. I know such a place exists. I feel the seeds which have dropped from that plane explode softly like gun barrels in a silent movie inside my belly. I mean, didn't you want to ever starve all the flesh from your body down to the pure bone? Don't you want to take a sledgehammer and pulverize those bones to a sheer white powder and throw it into the air just to see which way the wind is blowing? This is called Tiny Tortures. This is like, I'm not going to read the whole piece, but it's about when I was working at St. Mark's Church. I was working at St. Mark's Church, which is kind of the big poetry scene in New York, where I hung around since I was like 15 years old. And when I was about 16, 17, I had a job there, like, helping Ann Wallman, who ran it, I'd run the open readings on Monday nights, and on Wednesday nights I'd have the hotshot poets come and read, and I'd, fold the chairs afterward. I'd hold the contribution bowl as people were leaving, which, did wonders for my habit. When Furl and Getty came to town, I was straight for 3 fucking weeks. But the first part of it, basically, I talk about how some poets who you really love on the page are like out to lunch when they read. And other poets who you don't read too much are as spectacular when, they get up to read in front of an audience. So I'm speaking about that in the first part. And then there's this new phenomena coming along out of the happening scene, performance artists. And they start reading at the Wednesday night readings once in a while. So it's kind of about that. So it starts here. Lately, they've also been inviting these performance artists to do their acts. This is just another name for the same folks who did happenings in the 60s. By the very definition, these performance artists should have a way with an audience. I mean, it's clear by the nature of the medium that their art just don't exist without a crowd. Some of them are ingenious, enlightening, and entertaining as well. Some of them are quite funny, actually, though often that is not their intention. Then again, many of them are wrapped in so many layers of pretense that it would be a performance piece in itself to strip them all away. They are boundless in their energy to bore. And they are so smug that you want to go to their most sensitive body parts with rusty tweezers. Well, that was harsh. Well, it's no different from the poets. When it's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's wretched. The former you take home, the latter you just leave behind. Actually, I shouldn't knock this genre since I myself was a performance artist once for a day. I was about 17, and the event called for about 20 painters, musicians, and poets to each do a piece, no longer than 3 minutes. I remember it was on a Sunday afternoon because I woke up at my friend's apartment, which we referred to as headquarters, the morning of the show, on my knees and hugging porcelain in the bathroom with a cough syrup and beer hangover, and absolutely no idea what to do for my 3 minutes in the spotlight of art. I had already dismissed the idea of boiling an egg, a 3-minute egg. It just didn't seem to have the necessary edge. Then, right there in the john, washing the puke from my chin at the bathtub faucet, I saw the answer. A hearty-sized cockroach trying in vain to scale the slick sides of the tub. I dashed into the living room and grabbed a small brown paper bag from among the debris of empty beer bottles and sleeping bodies, then returned and scooped in the insect, shaking him securely into the bottom of the bag, cautiously folding it on top. I had half of my routine. And in the cabinet beneath the kitchen sink, I found the other half, which I threw into a knapsack along with the bag bug. I waited for the others to wake. We smoked some grass, drank some wine, and watched the usual Sunday morning cartoons and Wonderama. I split around an hour before the 4 p.m. showtime. I arrived at the gig, which was at a large ground floor space across from Max's Kansas City, right as things were beginning. The woman who organized the event came over and told me when I go on, which turned out to be, fortunately, toward the end. She asked me if I had a title for my event, but I couldn't think of anything offhand. I just said no, I didn't have a name for it. Well, I'll just introduce you and call your piece Untitled. Well, okay. Things moved along quickly, the woman in charge introducing each performer and title over the microphone. The place was packed, and since there was no one stage where the pieces were performed, the crowd just moved from one end of the room to the other, gathering around the spot where the action took place. 3 of the events were clever. Others made the allotted 3 minutes seem endless. There was this musician who subjected everyone to this viciously high-pitched tone at a decibel level that had people clapping hands over their ears, grinding their teeth in agony. Some had to duck out onto Park Avenue South. I could even feel my roach banging around the walls of his bag, freaked out by the sound. After that, an art critic, a mediocre poet, covered the windows of the place with long strips of black tape, forming X's. Some pompous geek behind me was hailing the wonderful statement it made. It has a lovely negative capability, he informed his girlfriend. I began laughing so hard, people surrounded me, thinking I was beginning my performance. Then a woman painter did a 3-minute striptease. The stragglers out on the sidewalk just scurried back in for that one. When she shimmied off her dress, the only thing she wore beneath it was a huge alarm clock on a garter belt. It sounded off right at the end of 3 minutes. I liked that one. It had precision. I kept checking out my roach to see if he or she, though I think it was a bull roach, was doing all right. It seemed to be holding up. The organizer came over and told me I was on after the next person. I wandered over to a corner to gather myself together. I was suddenly not only nervous, but totally depressed. To me, like the piece was already done. At the moment the concept first came, actually crawled to me in the bathroom at headquarters. I didn't see the point in doing it now in front of all these people. I was satisfied with the way it went down in my head. All the rest was just ego. All the rest was just, as the man said, the madness of art. But I realized I was just playing head games, justifying an escape because of my stage fright. My theory was no more than some inverted elitism. If I'm not going to shut up, I've got to put up. And it was about that time. I ran over to the organizer who was at the microphone about to announce me. I whispered into her ear that I had changed my mind, that I did indeed have a title for my piece. She stepped back to the mic and it sounded over the crowd. Here is Jim Caroll performing his work, Tiny Tortures. I moved to the center of the room, then signaled the people to close in as tight as possible around me to see, reserving only enough room for me to operate. I knelt down in the middle of the circle they had formed and reached into the knapsack placed at my side. I pulled out the paper bag with one hand, then with the other, a can of Raid. I undid slowly the neat folds on top of the bug bag, then turned it over and gently shook it. The roach landed on its back upon the highly varnished wooden floor. It didn't move. I felt lumps in my throat, lungs, heart, and bowels. If the little fucker had croaked on me, I was up shit's creek. Then, to my great relief, he flipped over and spun around as if the whole thing had been purposefully done for dramatic effect, as if we'd been rehearsing the whole fucking thing for 3.5 months. I quickly raised up the can of deadly spray, and not a moment too soon, he was making a dash for it and moving quick, right toward a sea of dilettante uptown shoes. I cocked the trigger to the can and blasted him in one long barrage. He turned and headed in the other direction, but I laid down a well-timed strategic pattern of quick bursts. He was hit and hit bad, again and again, but he struggled on. Dazed by the malodorous insecticide, he began to move in circles, rallied by the applause of the crowd, whose mood and gestures had suddenly shifted from that of hip supporters of the arts into crazed rednecks in the heat of a cockfight. I kept up my spurts. Pools of the stuff were forming. What an adversary, what a genuine trooper I had picked from the tub that morning. This was the greatest fucking cockroach in the world, I thought. But in the end, no matter how much heart, the roach could not stand up against the savage forces of art, not to mention Raid. It finally crumbled in its tiny tracks, its legs just sort of spreading out to the sides. The incredible part is it held on to just under the 3-minute mark before collapsing. Of course, I felt compassion for the little vermin, but as far as the event went, things couldn't have gone better. The audience loved it. The following week, in both the East Village Other and the Village Voice, I was singled out as a stone rave in their reviews of the shows. One referred to the keen, trenchant commentary which the piece made on urban decay. The other called it a, quote, non-verbal demonstration on the horrors of Vietnam. I agree. All that was exactly what flashed through my mind as I bagged the bug in headquarters bathroom that morning. And I might add, there was a large dose of negative capability as well. It just goes to show you how random are our gains in the performance art trade. Fact is, the only point I was making is the point you get then as now.